Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. And don't forget to check out the Swag Cave, the residence branding company Swag Cave. That link is in the podcast description. We got some new items in there, so go check it out. We're going to talk some Packers in this one, and then at the end of the podcast, because we're kind of, I know the math isn't accurate, but it is essentially the first quarter of the season is in the books. So we like to assess grades, or we like to give grades and such, right? So I'm going to hand out my grades for the Packers at the end of this podcast. But let's talk about the game from yesterday against the Vikings, the loss against the Vikings. Yesterday, Packers falling 31-29 to the Vikings. Vikings remain undefeated on season 4-0. Packers falling to 2-2 on the season. Jordan Love returned to the lineup yesterday. He ends up finishing at 32 of 54, 389 yards, 4 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions. Did take 1 sack as well. So I don't want to go through all the stats and statistics. Essentially, I want to kind of focus on a few things that stood out to me a little bit. First, let's start off with Jordan Love and his return to the field. I think it's fair to say that he looked a little rusty to begin the game with. I thought Trent Green, who was on the broadcast, made a few good points too, saying, it looks like he maybe wasn't. Footwork was a little off, not necessarily driving and putting a lot of weights in his throws on that left knee, his injured left knee. You could tell from a lot of his throws they were pretty low, and he acknowledged it after the game that he made things a little difficult on his receivers there too with some of those low throws. But and I thought he looked better as the game went along. Still some mistakes there. The throw to Dontavian Wicks in the end zone there, I get Wicks should be anticipating that throw or maybe even looking for it and such. But, at that point in time, at that moment of the game when you're trying to make that comeback there, it was like, ugh. But I think it's fair to say that Love wasn't, god-awful. You could tell there was maybe a little bit of rust or, a guy that hasn't played in a couple weeks. And you hope that, all right, knocked off that rust, got to go out there and played, with that knee injury. I'm sure there was some unknown factors for him, how it was going to hold up and how it would feel and how he would be able to play in that game. But on the positive side, you're hoping, okay, moving forward, hopefully it'll get a little bit better. He'll get a little bit more comfortable. He'll understand a little bit more and kind of knock off that rust. I think today is going to be an important day, though, too, for Love's knee. After that full workload, he did acknowledge after the game yesterday, too, that, he's not 100%, and, he could kind of feel it. He could feel it in his knee there. And we'll see how he feels today, in terms of, swelling and all that sort of stuff. But, Love's play, though, from Sunday, I think it's fair to say it was up and down. It was up and down. It started off pretty slow, started off pretty rusty. Mechanics were a little off. Timing was a little off. Anticipation maybe a little off. But hopefully, that'll continue to get better the more he's out there on the field. Other things that kind of stood out to me, I think we got to look at the defense for Green Bay, too. You want to talk about that first drive of Minnesota, and I know a lot of Packers fans are going through some what-ifs. What if Isaiah McDuffie makes that interception? I get it. He's a linebacker, and he's diving for it, but you got to come up with plays like that. Later on in the game, Minnesota's linebacker came up with a big-time pick, and it was a little bit harder. If you have an opportunity to make a big play and to create a turnover, if you're on defense, you got to take advantage of that. You absolutely have to take advantage of that. And he did it. And then it was kind of like a kick in the gonads after that, because what happens after that is Minnesota picks up a 3rd and long on a wide open, Jefferson, and then next play is a long touchdown pass. I don't know if it was miscommunication within the secondary that didn't have Jair Alexander in the game, didn't have Carrington Valentine either. So you look at the depth of the corner, and you had Corey Ballantyne out there. What a kick in the gonads after not potentially coming away with an early turnover, and then what does Minnesota do? They capitalize on Green Bay's mistake. Like, okay, 2 big plays. 2 big plays after that. You get yourself in an early 7-0 hole. And then it was like Murphy's Law in the first half. Things that are going to go wrong. I mean, when things are going to go wrong, they're really going to go wrong, right? It's like, okay, Green Bay's first offensive drive after that. But, they move down, and then you're thinking, okay, maybe going to come on, there we go. And then you kind of get some wind out of your sails after a missed field goal. Minnesota goes down. What do? Capitalize. It's 14-0. It was just like, here we go. But not limiting big plays on defense. Not taking advantage of opportunities there to get some big plays, i.e. the interception and such. But then not taking care of the ball yourself on interception on the offense and such. I mean, everything that could go wrong felt like it went wrong in that first half. Murphy's Law for Green Bay. It was painful. I mean, it was a butt whooping to the next degree in that first half. Green Bay, yes, they shot themselves in the foot a lot, and they made a lot of mistakes themselves, which maybe is the positive side of things. If you want to look at a positive side of things, it's like, okay, Green Bay kind of, did a lot of that to themselves, but you have to give credit to Minnesota for capitalizing on it and taking advantage of it, especially on the first half there. They did it. They took advantage of that. They took advantage of the mistakes, and they took advantage of the poor play from Green Bay in the first half, and it allowed them to get up to a 20-0 victory. Credit to Green Bay to come out, especially second half, fourth quarter, and claw their way back into that thing, to dig back into it. And then at one point, 28-22. Confidence, momentum is riding on Green Bay's side, right? But again, what happens defensively? And this is a credit to Kevin O'Connell, play caller, head coach for Minnesota. A lot of teams may have just tried to, start off simple run, get the clock moving, and now he comes out throwing the football. I mean, he's just like, okay, enough of this. Going to put our own little dagger into this. They come out throwing the football. Minnesota goes down and ends up getting a field goal there, but that ending, it was almost reminded me of last year's home game against the Vikings when Green Bay lost, when Minnesota kept giving Green Bay opportunities to get back in the game or to win it, and then Green Bay would throw a pick or would do some stupid mistake. This game reminded me so much, especially towards the end, in that fourth quarter of last year's home loss to Minnesota, where there were opportunities there. There were opportunities for the taking, and Green Bay didn't do it. They didn't take advantage of those opportunities. So, but back to the defensive side here, the pass rush. I mean, so Sam Darnold got sacked a couple times. Quay Walker, he got a sack. Keyshawn Nixon had that big sack that forced the fumble over there too. And I will say, too, couple big plays. I don't want to say Green Bay didn't make any couple big plays or didn't take advantage of any couple big plays because, for one, the punt or the muffed punt, to be able to get that's a big play. Keyshawn Nixon's sack that resulted in a fumble, that's a big play. So I don't want to miss those because Green Bay did have a couple of big plays that they capitalized on. But I think you look at that. I know a lot of fans or a lot of people are kind of questioning the pass rush right now for Green Bay, and I'm just confused, I guess, is maybe the best way to put it with this, because, you can make the case in the first 2 weeks of the season, it's like a little bit of a contained pass rush because you have 2 mobile quarterbacks, right? And then you go into week 3 against Will Levis, and all the numbers point to this is a guy that you can get after, that you should blitz, and that you should get after. And what does Green Bay do? They do it. They come away with 8 sacks. And you come into this game with Sam Darnold, who has been a very good quarterback against the blitz, who has been beating the blitz. But at the same time, he's kind of been under a lot of pressure here too, defensive pressure and such. And he's a little bit banged up with that knee as well. And it just felt like pass rush was incredibly lacking, especially when you consider your top corner's not in this game. Your other corner, Carrington Valentine, who has logged a ton of snaps for you, not in this game. So you're deep in the depth of your depth chart of your corner. I feel like a way to help out those corners that a lot of us have said over the years is like what helps out a good pass defense, what helps out corners is a pass rush, right? It's getting after the quarterback, not allowing the quarterback to be comfortable and allowing guys like a Justin Jefferson to go out there and Addison in his first game coming back and picking up a couple touchdowns there too. I mean, the pass rush just felt like, for the most part, was kind of non-existent. Yes, they ended up with only just, look about 3 quarterback hits. That's it, 3 quarterback hits compared to Minnesota. Minnesota, came in with 5 sacks in each of their first 3 games, 15 total. Credit to Green Bay's offensive line. Jordan Love only got sacked once, but he got hit 10 times. He got hit 10 times. So even though they didn't get after him and they didn't take him down to the ground, like 5 times like they did in their first 3 games each, they got to him, hit him 10 times. Green Bay hit Sam Darnold 3 quarterback hits. 2 sacks, 3 quarterback hits. Are you starting to get a little concerned with the front, with the defensive front, especially now with maybe Devontae Wyatt going to be missing some time here, who you could say was arguably probably their best defensive lineman, one of their front 4 in the first few weeks. He was probably the most productive. But I look at a guy like where's Rashawn Gary right now? Where's 52? Sure, he's getting chipped. A few times he's getting double teamed in that. But the guy is being paid to be a premier pass rusher in this league. He is getting paid to be one of the top pass rushers in this league. And we are 4 games into this season. 4 games in this season, he's got 1 sack and 6 tackles. And you want to know something else? 4 of those 6 tackles came yesterday. So, what's going on with Rashawn Gary now is probably where, when we're looking at that defensive front, that to me is a concern. Is like, where's 52 at right now? I mean, we talked about all offseason, the excitement surrounding, and I'm not ready to jump off the ship or bandwagon this defense and anything like that, but I mean, we pinpointed certain people that could really benefit from this style of defense, and you heard all offseason, like we said right before the Philadelphia game, this honeymoon's going to be over with, and I think it's clearly obvious that the honeymoon is over with for a lot of fans surrounding Jeff Hafley's defense here. But when I look at a guy like Rashawn Gary, and I look at the start of his season so far, it's like, dude, where's he at right now? I get it. He gets focus from a lot of, opposing offenses and linemen, and he gets chipped and all that sort of stuff. But the greats still find a way, right? The best in the game still find a way to make plays, to still affect games. And I think it's fair to say, and I think it's fair to question, what's going on with Rashawn Gary? Now, why the slow start? Why the quiet start? I mean, hopefully, now that we enter the second quarter of the season, we can get this thing going here, and we can get it humming here a little bit. But, I mean, when you got Sam Darnold, who's having a fantastic season, he goes 20 of 28. 20 of 28. And then, then you throw the 2 sacks in there too. Guy was able to pick apart that secondary that was banged up. Jefferson, 85. Jordan Addison, 72. Throwing Aaron Jones for 46 yards on 4 catches. Would have liked to have seen that pass rush go out there and help out that banged up secondary. And couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. And then, obviously, I think you look at the big question mark here is what's going on with the kicking situation. Braden Arvison missing 2 field goals in the game yesterday. And I know you kind of look at how the game ended and such, and that's an easy thing. I always prescribe to the theory of okay, if he makes that, we don't know if everything else plays out the same way, but I understand it. I understand the narrative and such. Nonetheless, the bigger story is he missed 2 field goals. And you look at his season right now, he's hitting 69.2% of field goals. 100% in extra points, but 69.2%. That's 30th in the league right now. 30th. So I don't know what Green Bay is going to do with their kicking situation. I know Matt LaFleur was still trying. I don't know the real if this is what he truly believes. If this is just coach speak and having the back of his players and whatnot. But he said he still has confidence in him and all that. But boy, this is tough. I don't know what you do at this point, because you look at free agent kickers out there in the NFL. I don't know if Mason would still want to come back. I know everybody wants Mason, but I don't know if that would still be an option out there. But there's not a lot. I mean, there's not a lot of that's easily the primo dude out there. I mean, yes, you got some veterans out there. I think I don't know if Robbie Gould officially retire and such. I'd have to double check it, but I mean, I'm at the point you trade a high draft pick just to get somebody in here. You look at some of these dang kickers out there that are where it's all right, 53 automatic for some of these guys. And right now, I think every Packers fan, a majority of Packers fans out there, are just holding their breath every time a kicker runs out there. I don't know what they do with this situation. I'm perplexed. Did they make a mistake in moving on from Anders right away? That's going to be under the microscope. That's going to be talked about all season long, depending on how the rest of the season goes. If Braden Arvison is the kicker on this ball club for the rest of the season. But there's no question. It's got to get better, man. I mean, this thing's got to get better. I just don't know where they go at this point. I don't know who they could potentially bring in. I mean, if you're Anders Carlson, do you even let's put yourself in Anders Carlson's shoes. I think he's still a free agent right now. I'd have to double, unless somebody pick him up. Would be let me see if I can find out here quick. But I mean, yeah, he's a free agent. So Green Bay picks up the phone. Do you even want to go back? And maybe it is because you don't even have a job right now and you just want to get back in the league and such. But God, what is going on? And how much do you point at Rich Bisaccia? You bring in Rich Bisaccia, very, well-known special teams coach, been in the league for how many years? You spend a lot of money to bring him on your staff. And he's done some good things. I don't want to say he's been awful. He's done some good things. I mean, Keyshawn Nixon is returner, all-pro. Daniel Whelan is looking like a fantastic punter in his second season on the job. But, man, what's going on with the kicking situation right now? You can't leave points out on the field. You just can't. It's unacceptable. Especially when some of them are like that quote-unquote gimmies, like a 37-yarder, for crying out loud. I mean, come on. I get it. Once in a while it's going to happen, but and I would hate to be a kicker. I would hate to be a kicker just because my mental game would suck. If I missed one, it's like golf. If I miss a bad shot, I'm done for that hole. It's like, God, then you put in a couple more and it's like, oh, great. But I'll ask you, I mean, how willing or how patient are you willing to be for Braden Arvison? It's a cool story, yes. His wife's Wisconsin native and such, but you look at the results on the field. How willing or how patient are you willing to be when you're leaving points out on the field? So, I mean, those are just a few things that kind of stood out to me, in this game. Jordan Love, to kind of recap it, Jordan Love looked a little rusty, looked a little off to begin. Thought he got better throughout the game and such. I also would like to know, and maybe I missed it, but there were stretches where Josh Jacobs wasn't on that field. And I get it, maybe trying to split some carries because, Josh Jacobs, you used him a lot in the first couple of weeks. But, I mean, that's one of your best players out there. And guy was on the sidelines quite a bit, it seemed like, yesterday. So, not sure what that's about. I mean, if I can get 8 out there as much to help out, I think I'd rather have that. And then we talked about defensive pass rush. You looked at that and not capitalizing on some, potential big plays. They did a couple. I don't want to say they didn't do it all. That muffed punt and then, the Keyshawn Nixon sack that resulted in a fumble. I have no idea what a catch is anymore in the league again. I mean, with the reviews, and then the one that they did let through was Xavier McKinney's 4th interception. I am so confused with what's a catch now. I shouldn't say now. I'm always confused, but I'm even more confused of what the heck is a catch in the National Football League these days. But missed opportunities, turnovers, felt like, yes, this was a game that Green Bay shot themselves in the foot a lot. And they missed a lot of plays. They left a lot on the field in a typical coach speak. You do have to give credit to Minnesota, especially in that first half, though, because they took advantage of that. They didn't allow Green Bay just to kind of hang around in that first half. They took advantage of it in that first half, and they put up a big number of 28. At one point, 28-0. If it's not for that muffed punt, it's probably 28-0 going into the half. Or, hell, maybe even more. Maybe it's 31-0 half. Who knows? So, if you want to look at it on the positive side of things, you look at this team and you look at how they clawed their way back, made it a game at the end there, made it close. Love looked off, looked a little rusty. You would expect that to get better. So that's the positive side of things. But I think going forward, some of the things that maybe concern at least me the most is the kicking game, but also the inconsistency with up front, with the defensive front, with those pass rushers, with that defensive line. The inconsistency up there. And then maybe you're kind of looking at the depth of corner. I hope Jair's not out too long. I don't know if Jair would have made all the difference in the world in the game yesterday, but could his presence and could his play have made the difference on a few plays that could have affected the game? Absolutely it could have. It absolutely could have. So overall, it was just like it was a frustrating game. It was kind of a downer game, especially in the first half. Then they get back into it. But then, when they're in it, when they make that comeback and not able to capitalize on 2 drives, you have the Tucker Kraft fumble, and then you have, the pick by Jordan Love. It's like championship teams take advantage of those moments. When you make that comeback and then you get the ball and then you're ready to make a couple drives there, you got to take it. You can't turn the ball over in those situations. Can't. You just can't. And hopefully this will be something that they can grow and learn upon too. So, and really quick, I want to go back to Josh Jacobs. I want to go back to Josh Jacobs here because I thought he should have gotten, when you look at the box score, and I'm at fault here, and I like to say don't box score scout, but even watching the game, it felt like, Josh Jacobs was on the sidelines quite a bit. Even the commentators were saying, where's Josh Jacobs? Emmanuel Wilson's getting in there and such. So it felt like that maybe the splits were almost like 50-50 when you want to see Josh Jacobs get more snaps. Well, you look at the snap counts now, and I just saw them. Josh Jacobs played 61% of the snaps. Manuel Wilson was 39%. So Jacobs was out there. I think myself and like a lot of people probably looked at the box score, guilty, can't do that, shouldn't do that, and saw, oh, man, 9 carries and 4 catches, so he only got the ball like 13 times. He touched the ball 13 times. So that, the fact that he did play 61% of the snaps, he played over half, okay? That tells you he was on the field maybe a little bit more than what we expected. But just 9 carries, I think that's a factor in that being down by so much, and then, you have to pass to try to get into it. But I think part of it, though, too, is where I wanted to see Jacobs a little bit more involved in the passing game, though, too. And I think there's ways to get him involved in the passing game a little bit more. Yes, 4 catches, not bad for a running back. I understand that. But I think, and maybe, we kind of got caught up a little bit in the offseason talk about how, Jacobs was going to be involved in the passing game, kind of similar to what Aaron Jones was for the Packers, right? Aaron Jones was a threat in the passing game when it came to the Packers. And you look at Aaron Jones, I mean, he had 4 catches for 46 yards against Green Bay. Josh Jacobs, 4 catches, 27. He was targeted 6 times in there. But I think it gets highlighted because we wanted him to maybe get the ball a little bit more. We wanted him to get the ball a little bit more. But when you break it down, he was out there 61% of the snaps. Just didn't maybe touch it as enough as we would have liked to have seen. And that's a combination of being down by so much early on and, just trying to throw the ball all around to, try to catch up, essentially. All right, before I end this episode of the podcast, I want to hand out some grades because I know the math isn't exactly equal now that they've added 17 games and such, but this is essentially the end of the first quarter of the season for the Packers here. So I like to hand out grades at the end of quarters, halfway through the seasons and such here. So, it's interesting too because the first 4 weeks of the NFL season, depending on which coach you kind of listen to, which players you listen to, a lot of them will kind of say, the first couple weeks of the season, I don't want to say you give them a pass, but you hear the phrase or the thought a lot that, you find out what teams really are after the first couple weeks, after the first few weeks of the season. And I think a lot of that has to deal with the fact that starters, a lot of them don't play in the preseason or they don't play a ton in the preseason. So they kind of, this is when they're knocking off their rust here a little bit, or they kind of get into the rhythm of things. But with all that being said, to grade Green Bay the first few weeks of the season here, you could go a lot of different ways here. Obviously we didn't get to see Jordan Love for 2 of these games, but those were 2 wins. The 2 wins for the Packers on here too. So maybe that helps grades in other areas. But just because it's the first 4 weeks of the season, I'm keeping it pretty generic in terms of who or what I'm going to grade. So I'm going to grade the offense, the defense, and the special teams. And then I'm going to grade Matt LaFleur and Jeff Hafley on this thing. So with that, let's go into this offense. The offense I'm giving a C. And I'm giving them a C because we've seen them put up some points. Philadelphia, they put up some points. They made that comeback against Minnesota in the fourth quarter. They're able to put up those points. But obviously Minnesota, nothing really in the first half until that muffed punt, and then Packers were able to punch it in after that. But you also have to factor in the amount of penalties. They lead the league right now, as of this recording, in offensive holding. You factor that in, and it's just the offense isn't really clicking there. And I think Jordan Love only playing 2 games. He looks not like he's in at full on game level. And I know he's a little bit banged up, so he's not 100% there. But even if you go back to the Philly game, he seemed a little off, seemed a little rusty, right? So Offensively, I'm giving them a C. I do give high remarks to what they did against Indianapolis and Tennessee in terms of the running game, but we're 4 weeks into this, so to me right now, it's about average. Maybe that's a little rough right now. Maybe it should be like a C+, B- or something on there, but, I look at, I factor in Love, not quite being, and obviously the injury factors into it too, but he's not quite there. The penalties on offense, I mean, that's got to get cleaned up big time here. Offensive line, I think for the most part is doing a solid job up there. Josh Jacobs has had his moments. I do question a little bit about why he wasn't on the field as much. Maybe, he had 46 snaps, but I mean, 9 carries in the loss against Minnesota, and I get it. You're supposed to pass it to get back into it after being down by that much there. But, offensively, I'm going to go with a C because to me it's about average right now, and it's not quite to the level I think we imagined this offense being before the season, with all these wide receivers and tight ends and then Jacobs and Jordan Love on there. So not there yet, but I think it's got room for improvement. If I'm going to put my teaching, mannerisms or whatever in here, I think, right now it's a C, but definitely room for improvement. I think they can get up there, and maybe that's part of it too with the first 4 weeks of the season, a little bit of rust, a little bit just not quite full-on clicking at this point. But I will get into the offense a little bit more when I give Matt LaFleur a grade here. Defensively, overall, I'm going C+, C+. And where I'm at, and there the C+ is the interceptions, the turnovers. I mean, they are by far, way better at getting turnovers than they were last year. That's the big positive in this thing. Where I struggle here a little bit, I kind of boil it down to individual performances. I want to see more from Rashawn Gary. I want to see more from Quay Walker. Okay, I want to see more from Kenny Clark. I want to see more from the pass rush here. I get it for the first 2 weeks of the pass rush. A little bit of what do you want to call it? Kind of like a containment pressure going up against mobile quarterbacks and such. Then you went after Will Levis against Tennessee, had 8 sacks, then kind of struggled there against Minnesota and going up against Sam Darnold. So I love the turnover aspect from this defense so far. And Xavier McKinney's already got 4 interceptions for crying out loud. But there's other players, there's other areas of this defense that I want to see improvement from. And they're from guys that, like a Gary and a Kenny Clark that I think we had high expectations, and rightfully so, because they're getting paid as some of the best players in the league, and we haven't quite seen that yet from those guys. So that's kind of where I'm at with a C+C for the Packers defense. Special teams, I'm giving them a D, and maybe for some people that'd be like that's too high. We haven't really gotten anything for the return game because people aren't kicking it to Keyshawn Nixon. Braden isn't really working at this point in time at kicking right now. He's 30% in the league. He is the only kicker in the league that has a missed field goal that's under 40 yards right now, okay? So, I mean, it's not great. It's not great with Braden Arvison now. The reason they don't have an F is because Daniel Whelan is looking like a home run hit at punter. He might have been one of the MVPs in that loss to the Vikings because of his hang time, the distance he's been putting on these punts. Daniel Whelan looks like a Pro Bowl, top-of-the-line, top-level punter in this league. So, to me, that's why the special teams unit gets a D. Otherwise, D+. Otherwise, it's F. It's straight up F because there's nothing in the return game right now, and I know that's not all their fault, but the kicking game has been awful. But except for the punting game. So that's why it's like D+ for me. So, coach grades, I'm giving LaFleur a B. And I thought he was masterful in Indy or against Indy and Tennessee. And there was great moments in Philadelphia, or good moments in Philadelphia, good moments against Minnesota and that. But the overall operation, penalties is a reflection on coaching. Coming out against Minnesota and looking how bad as they did in that first half, that to me is a reflection on coaching as well. So I don't want to overreact to just the latest game because this is a full quarter on grade. If we grade this after Tennessee, he's probably at an A-. But I'm at a B right now with Matt LaFleur looking at this whole thing. I thought he showed off his play calling skills in that Indianapolis, Tennessee, his game planning skills in those two games. But there's other factors into this that boil it down to a B. The penalties, the way they started off against Minnesota, just getting your team prepared for that. And that's kind of where I'm at. Again, if this was after Tennessee, probably would have been an A- for me. Jeff Hafley, I'm at a C because I don't know what to make. I love the turnovers. That would be the A part in this. But I keep going back to the pass rush, and I'm willing to give it a bye the first couple weeks. It's so weird because like the first 3 weeks I could be like, yeah, okay, I get it. But that Minnesota one just kind of bugs me. But I think what bugs me the most is that Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary have been non-existent in this thing. They've been kind of non-existent. So and I think where that kind of bugs me too is like when we heard Jeff Hafley talk all offseason about wanting his defensive front, being aggressive, getting after the quarterback. We haven't really seen those numbers transpired into that, the sack numbers and such. And I know there's more to it than just sack numbers. You're looking at hits and rushes and all that. And they had 2 sacks against Sam Darnold, but just 3 quarterback hits. So I think it's a little incomplete. If I could give an incomplete, I would, but this is a first quarter grade. So I'm going to go with a C. There's stuff I like. The turnovers. I love the turnovers, especially that. Okay? But there's other parts of it. I think the run defense can be cleaned up a little bit more, and I can see, and I want that defensive front cleaned up a little bit more too. And Quay Walker being a little bit more consistent. So C for the offense, C+ for the defense. Matt LaFleur, and when I grade the coaches, I'm kind of looking more at like play calls and all that sort of stuff. Matt LaFleur B, Jeff Hafley C, special teams. I'm going with the D right now. So those are my grades. I know it might be kind of weird, like, well, why would you give the defense a C+ and then Hafley a C? Defensively, I'm kind of looking at mostly like the players, performance from the players and such, and Hafley and coaches and LaFleur, you're looking at like play calls and preparation and all that fun stuff. So, all right, what are your grades though? All right, hit me up. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, hit me up on Twitter /X at DANKSPR or Facebook.com/Casper Sports. That is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. A big thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. And if you got a few minutes, if you could, give us a 5-star rating and a positive review so others can find the podcast. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I will talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.